Even if Kyle came in and was like, you have to marry the Rain Wilder because he has a lot of money, she'd be like, yeah, daddy, you're so smart. Ooh, I should not have said it like that.
Welcome back to another episode of Is Fitz Happy. I'm Luke.
And I'm Emma.
And this week we're discussing Chapter 16, Taking Charge. So the first part of this chapter, we are with Althea. And we join her right as Brashen is leaving and get her thoughts on the whole situation, where at the end of last chapter, they all had kind of gathered and learned the Vivacia had been taken over by pirates, that Captain Kennett, who supposedly kills all of the slavers, crews, has taken her hostage and claimed her as his own ship. So they're kind of deciding to get together, to band together, to work towards a common cause, and that's kind of where we left it. But we didn't get to see Althea's point of view of that situation, while we had Brashen being like, oh, I hope Althea notices me.
Yes, the whole time.
So she says that she had left the dusty room dark and did not even lean too close to the window lest Brashen look back and chance to see her. Althea had been lucky she had been struggling with Malta when she first entered the study that evening. No one had remarked on her red cheeks or lost breath. She did not think that even Brashen had realized her moment of panic at seeing him. So, obviously, a little bit of a situation at seeing Brashen again.
Yeah, she was very surprised. I will clarify that she is currently in a maid's room, or what would be a maid's room if they had any. And that is where she is looking out at Brashen as he leaves. And yeah, there definitely is some tension there. She is confident that nobody noticed, but also cannot believe she had that reaction. And she's trying to kind of chalk it up to the fact that in seeing Brashen there with her panicked mother and sister, she assumed the worst, that Brashen had come forward to tell them what had gone on between them and to, even worse, ask for her hand in marriage to make up for the fact that he had sullied her good grace.
She had felt a secret relief that she did not have to admit publicly what she had done. She accepted that now. Amber's words had made her confront herself on that issue weeks ago. She was almost ashamed now that she had tried to hide behind excuses. What they had done together. If she wanted to respect herself as a woman and an adult, she could not claim otherwise. She had only spoken otherwise, she decided truthfully, because she had not wanted to be blamed for such an irresponsible act. If he had really tricked or coerced her into bed with him, then she could justify the pain she had felt since then. She could have been the wronged woman, the seduced innocent, abandoned by a heartless sailor. But such roles insulted both of them. So she's kind of had to confront that in herself, that, yeah, it was a consensual relationship and a consensual moment between both of them.
Right. Yeah, I think I like the growth that we see from her in this matter. And I think it shows, again, this really good relationship she has with Amber, that and the importance of having friends that push back on you when you're wrong so that you can grow. I think it's really good that we have that, and that she has stepped away from pretending it's not something that she wanted or chose for herself and giving herself that agency back.
Right.
So from there, Althea then begins to focus more on Brashen and what he looked like when they were when he was just there, and talk about how she realized she did miss him and had been missing him, but she's also kind of disappointed in him because she did notice immediately the Sindin burn on his lip, and is kind of disappointed in him for not living up to the man that her father knew he could be, and kind of uses that as a reason why it can't be anything more than just old colleagues missing each other, and disappointment. The disappointment is coming from his weak will, not because he wasn't there for her.
It hurt and disappointed her that he had turned pirate, yet such clothes suited him far better than the sober dress of a Bingtown trader's son ever had. She disapproved of everything about him, yet the sight of him had set her heart racing. She had regrets, she told herself, that was all. She regretted that betting with him had destroyed their easy companionship. She regretted that she had let herself do such an inappropriate thing with such an inappropriate person. She regretted that he had given up and not become the man her father had believed he would. That was all she felt, regrets. Again, trying to convince herself. We've talked about this ad nauseum, that a lot of the characters in these books just try to convince themselves of truths that are not there.
Right. It's just easier to hide from the truth than it is to confront that. And I think especially in this moment. And Althea is still a little confused too. She goes on to talk about how Brashen can't just be there to tell them about Vivacia. There's no way he would come all that way just to let them know what happened. There has to be something else that brought him back. She just doesn't know what.
But then that switches her mind over to Vivacia, and her heart is wrenching because Kyle wasn't enough. Now there has to be some sort of trauma at the hands of a pirate as well.
Right. So she talks about how no matter what the outcome is, Vivacia will be different than when she last met her because there's going to be trauma on her deck. And
just experiences in general.
Yeah. And so that'll really change things. And she's kind of worried about what that means for the future and her relationship with Vivacia, but also is, I think, more concerned about Vivacia's well-being in this rather than what she can do for the...
It's also marking just the journey that they've all been through so far, because she says she's going to be as different as I am from who I was then. As different as he is. Talking about Brashen at the end. So just noting that, and a little introspection, that these people have changed, and things that Vivacia is going through is not just run of the mill. You know, she's not going to be the same ship when she was newly awakened or starting to bond with Althea.
Yeah, so that's definitely a hard thing that's going on there. And that is the last we get to really hear from Althea this chapter.
Yeah. Which means we switch over to Malta.
Yeah. And as we know, we ended on Malta's voice last chapter, where she had decided that all these other women of the Vestrit family are scheming and conniving and control power-hungry people. So she needs to be the one to fix it because they're definitely not going to be able to do it. And
she's kind of coming from a place of, I have things I can do to help, but it's also from that malicious point of view.
Yeah,
and she does reach out and try to do things, you know.
Yeah, I think a strength of Malta's character, a very rare compliment from me about Malta, a strength of Malta's character is she does see to the quick of things, and she isn't one to be bothered about flitting around the problem and trying to find the best way to handle things if there's already an option.
Right.
She's going to take the option available to her, which I guess is a little bit of something you do when you're young to not fully think through things, but there is that like go-getter attitude and that sense of, I have something I can do right now and I'm going to do that, which is kind of in contrast to Ronica, who is more like, let me think of all the options for a really long time to the point where now there's no more options and I'm forced into a corner.
So Malta is recounting the rest of the night before Brashen heads off. The family had kind of gathered what was left and had a late dinner or late meal, basically after midnight. And then after that retired back to the study, where Selden was even included in the conversation. But before I talk about her feelings on all of this, I want to make mention of the line that when Rach had come in later from her day off in town, the family in Brashen had moved to the grandfather's study. So that just, goes to show that Malta, definitely sent a runner for her family.
Wink, wink. Yeah, so that is a good point to bring up. I do also want to correct you really quick. It is after midnight when she slips away from the group, so they're not eating at midnight. They're eating
Oh, yeah,
late
yeah, yeah.
afternoon, or well, later than probably normal dinner time.
Right. Good call. So yeah, even Selden had been included in the discussion, much to Malta's disgust.
Yeah, the baby that's 2 years younger than her, maybe.
All he did was ask stupid questions, which would not have been so bad, except that everyone kept trying to answer them in ways that he would understand while insisting that he should not be scared. Finally, he fell asleep on the hearth. Brashen had offered to carry him up to his bed, and her mother had actually allowed that instead of rousing the little bug.
Malta is, ugh.
I think Selden is like 7 or 8, so about 5 years difference between the two, where to the point where Malta has to look after him a few times and then just makes him cry because Althea remarks on that.
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. It just is funny, Malta being like, ugh, kids, when
Right.
she is a kid. And I think part of that probably stems from the fact that she wanted to be special.
Yes.
She's not a kid. She's capable of being a grown up. But now this other child of the family is also being told.
See, Malta, being the middle child, has strong older child energy in my mind. Like elder sibling, like, oh, I was never allowed to do this, so Selden should never be allowed to do this.
Okay,
And when
rude.
she finally gets allowed, Selden is allowed too, because the parents are like, okay, fine, the kids are allowed in the discussion.
Yeah.
And she's like, no, I'm an adult. They have to wait their turn before they can get their cell phone.
Rude. Since you're the baby of the of your family and I'm the oldest. Very rude. I do not appreciate the call out. That is completely true.
It's just funny to me because Wintrow's there, but like he doesn't count, you
Yeah.
know, because he got sent off to be a priest and is no longer part of the family.
Yeah, but no, there is that energy going on of like, seriously, I just had to spend like 6 months to a year proving that I could be a woman, and I still barely have that. And Selden just comes in at the right time and they're like, yeah, okay, we'll tell you. But I also think that, again, points to her lack of maturity, because clearly this isn't a situation that they can hide
Right.
from Selden.
Yeah.
And
He deserves to know.
yeah, he needs to know that
Where's his father?
where his dad is. Yeah, in a age appropriate way. And so it's also funny that she's mad he's asking stupid questions when he doesn't know anything. He's a kid. He's been kept in the dark. He doesn't know as much as she does. So of course they sound stupid because she knows the answers. So I don't know, but also she can't take that knowledge of like, oh, children ask stupid questions and then turn that into an introspective thing of
course
like,
not. Of course
she's
not.
been asking stupid questions. And that's just part of
Because
truly,
she's intelligent.
yeah, she knows everything. No, and I truly believe that everybody asks stupid questions when they don't know things, but that's not a bad thing. I don't think that's like
Right.
negative, right?
No,
Like you
yeah.
have to ask the stupid questions to get the substance, and that's fine. It's just funny that Malta does not see herself mirrored in Selden.
And so now we figure out why Malta wanted to slip away from the family so badly. She draws her cloak more tightly about her. It was a fine summer night, but the dark cloak helped both camouflage her and keep the dew at bay. So she is outside right now. Her slippers and the hem of her gown were already soaked, so we know it is well after midnight, as she says, probably very, very early morning.
Mm-hmm.
And she is, as if you guys recall, on her way to meet Cerwin Trell, who she had told she would meet them after, at night.
Yeah.
In a certain gazebo or something somewhere.
Yeah, she had given Dello a message to pass on to her brother, I believe.
Yeah.
Because Dello brought a secret note, and the note said that he wanted to see her. And so she told Dello, like, I'll tell him to meet me. And she originally was not planning to make this meeting.
Yeah, she wasn't sure if she was going to come or not, but she ends her description here saying that she longed to go back to the house. She reminded herself she must be brave. This was no prank or test of her will. What she did now, she did for her father's sake. She was sure he would understand. So we know at the end of last chapter, she kind of made that determination, like, I have to do things now. And she wasn't
Mhm.
sure at the beginning of last chapter whether she would go to this meeting, but now she is going to try to use this leverage to get money to ransom her father back.
Right. And I think this line specifically points out to the fact that she has some understanding of what's proper and improper. And
Oh, yeah.
although she did make kind of a big mistake, I would call it, whenever she dressed for the trader ball
Yeah.
in secret and dressed up like
She
a
was
courtesan.
so young then.
Yeah, yes, so young. I think that points to the fact that she just was ignorant in that, and that there is some sort of sense of what's
Mhm.
proper and not proper. And she tries to toe the line. I think, especially last chapter, we had her inappropriate comments towards Brashen. It's clear that she still doesn't quite know what that line is or understand the danger of flirting with that line. But I think this shows that in her mind, she does have a firm grasp of what's appropriate and
She's
inappropriate.
13 now. She's had
Yeah.
experience.
And so I think in mentioning that this isn't a prank, I'm going here and my father will understand, it lets us know that she knows meeting a man at night in secret is super inappropriate and would not be looked, even if nothing happens, if society found out, her father's going to be upset with her.
Also,
So
she's in her nightgown. She is previously has been kind of towing the line and
Mhm.
playing with Cerwin, and now this is a very direct meeting.
yes, in her mind, that was all fun and games before. This is me using my skills to get what I want again. And even though it might verge on inappropriate, it's worth it because lives are at stake.
Right.
So I do want to point out that, like, clear acknowledgement of society's expectations and how she would normally not go this far. But she is going towards
Yeah.
in the middle of the night to see a man. And there's a little break here talking about how she thinks it's funny that Althea tried to implore her to work together for to get the ship back,
Yeah.
and her father.
And how her grandmother even made a good show of it, but they can't do anything, or they don't think Malta can do anything about it.
Yeah, and I find that really interesting because I didn't necessarily get that sense from them. I mean, I don't necessarily know that it was like a
I get that
conscious-
sense from Althea. And probably Veronica as well. They're just kind of like, don't oppose us in trying to help get your father back.
But I don't know that they don't think that there's I don't think that they're like, there's nothing she could do to help. I think
I
they're
just
like,
don't think they're thinking of it, you know?
yeah, I think it's an afterthought. And I think if anything, they would be like, okay, here's some ways you could help.
Yeah.
If she asked, if she was like, hey, I want to help, what can I do?
Mhm.
They would find something for her. But she just is taking the route of, they don't even understand how powerful I am. And so
Malta knows the opposite is true. While Mother wept in her bedchamber and boiled wine as an offering to Sa, and Aunt Althea and her grandmother lay awake thinking of what might be sold off to raise coin, only Malta would act. Malta alone realized that she was the one who could rally others to their aid. Her resolve hardened as she thought about it. She would do whatever she had to do to bring her father safely home. Then she would see to it that he knew who had truly made a sacrifice for him, who said that women could not be brave and daring for the sake of those they loved. Fortified with this thought, she picked her way along the path. First of all, no one says that.
no, literally, you are the only one who thinks that, Malta. Well, you and Kyle, but like, the three strong women you're just belittling earlier, yeah, they don't say that.
Only
All
Malta
you-
is going to make the sacrifice.
Only she is making any sort of sacrifice at all. And that sacrifice is, checks notes, going to see a cute boy that she has a crush on anyway late at night.
And manipulating him to give her money.
Yeah, like, what a sacrifice. I'm sure your father would be so proud.
So she's approaching this trellis area, and for a second, all the spook tales she had ever heard about the rain wilds assailed her. Had Rain said something to watch over her and would think it was her betraying him, and all these kinds of things kind of are creeping through her mind as she's approaching this late night rendezvous.
And this is especially making her think of that because she sees a faint glow. And so where's the glow coming from?
Soft yellow light flickered and swayed.
But it's just a candle, or several candles, potentially, that Cerwin had set up to set the mood.
Her heart surged and raced. It was perfect. A minstrel's romantic tale. She was the heroine. The young woman wronged by fate and her family, beautiful, young, and heartbroken over her father's captivity. Despite all that her unloving family had done to her, she would be the one to make the ultimate sacrifice that saved them all. Cerwin was the young man who had come to deliver her, for his manly young heart thundered with love for her. He could not do otherwise. She stood still in the fickle moonlight, savoring the drama of it all. So again, we've talked before about Malta's love for dramatics, and Rain even comments on it that he's wearing the gloves and veil not because he has to, because he's relatively unmarked.
Yeah.
But because she likes the mystery.
Yeah, she likes the drama. She likes the story of it all. And I think
a romance novel reader.
Yeah. This is she's heard a lot of romance tales, and she just wants to be the heroine of a romance tale, which whomst among us does not want that? I get it. Respect.
I will say I've never dreamed of that personally, but
you've never dreamed of
being the
the heroine of a romance novel?
No, making a sacrifice for a young boy whose heart thunders with love for me.
Fair enough. But yeah, I think it's really done well here, right? I think seeing the youngness, the feeling how different she is as a character to all of the other women, I think is especially present here. That Malta is young. She's a young girl, and she wants that fairy tale life. She wants herself to be the hero and her life to have more meaning than everybody else's. And that has to be how it is, because that's what she wants. And it's kind of sad. As much as I don't love Malta, I still don't love how her heart and hopes are kind of dashed in this scene, because real life doesn't live up to fantasy.
She's so set on her expectations of this being, in words for our world, a movie scene.
Yeah.
She is so set on things playing out exactly as she sees it that she's very disappointed in how Cerwin acts.
Yeah, and it's funny because she has expectations of what's going to happen. She thinks that she can predict what's going to happen because she is so skilled at manipulating the stage that she is on.
She's the main character.
Yeah, that other people will follow and it will happen the way she wants. But she doesn't really take into consideration that everyone else has free will. And even if she is manipulating them to do the thing she wants, that doesn't mean that they have to respond to that in the way that she is hoping.
Right. So she's seeing Cerwin pace back and forth, who's making the erratic lighting, and Dello huddling up under a corner with her cloak. And his hands were empty. She frowned to herself. That didn't seem right. Rain would have brought her flowers, at least. Well, perhaps whatever Cerwin had for her was small. Maybe it was in his pocket. She refused to let it spoil the moment.
Again, another instance where, why would he bring you a gift? Why would that? I mean, don't get me wrong. I get the want for that. I understand why you would think that would make the perfect scene. But the fact that it even is a dampener, no present. Okay, Malta, it's fine.
So she preps herself to go in and confront him, scraping her teeth over her lips to redden them, and enters to the spill of light from the gazebo.
Before we get more into it, I just want to make a quick comment. Dello is here, and Dello has been waiting just as long as Cerwin has. And originally Malta wasn't going to come, and Malta justified that last chapter by saying, oh, Cerwin's a hardy young lad. He can spend the night outside. It won't hurt anything.
Right.
But she literally didn't think anything about Dello being there.
Oh,
and
no.
I don't know if she talks about it. I can't remember off the top of my head if she touches on that at all during this, but I feel like there would be a little bit of disappointment there on Malta's side that Dello even showed up. Like, why wouldn't it just be the two of them in a secret rendezvous? Like, she makes a couple comments of she wishes Dello wasn't there, but I don't think she specifically is like, oh, Dello shouldn't be here at all. I can't believe he brought her.
No, I think she understands that Dello needed to come along, kind of, but it's spoiling her movie scene moment.
Right.
So she gets ready. She walks forward at a dignified pace, her face grave. Cerwin notices her, says, "Malta," his voice choked with suppressed emotion. He strode toward her. He would sweep her up in his arms. She braced herself for that, but instead he halted and then dropped to one knee before her. His head was bowed, and she could see only his dark curly hair. In a tight voice he said, "Thank you for coming. When midnight passed and you were not here, I feared," he gasped in a breath that was almost a sob, "I feared I had no hope at all."
Honestly,
he like plays into the dramatics too.
Cerwin and Malta deserve each other.
They do.
I truly believe they're a great match because they're both so dramatic.
Yeah.
Although, you know what? Maybe that's why they don't work, because he almost upstages her and she cannot be having that.
True. He's doing his own play here.
Yeah. Yeah. And he's not letting her be the main character.
He's the gallant hero coming in to sweep the young maiden off her feet.
And she's like, no, this is a story about the young maiden.
Proper.
Yes.
The proper man. Okay, so she obviously is, as you mentioned before, she notes Dello at the corner of her eye and is like kind of annoyed at the moment, but she has to respond and like is playing into it like it's just her and Cerwin here. It spoiled the mood to have Cerwin's little sister watching them. She pushed the thought away. Ignore her. It didn't matter. Dello couldn't tell anything without getting in big trouble herself. So she really plays into it, brings him up, saying like, "How could I not come?" And really leaning into, "You don't have no hope. You have all the hope in the world. It's my wicked family, you know?"
How could you think I would not come? No matter what sorrows batter me, no matter what danger to myself, you should have known I would come. Like, oh my God.
"I dared to hope," he admitted. When he looked up at her, she was shocked. He strongly resembled Brashen, yet he suffered in the comparison. She had thought Cerwin manly and mature. Now, after she had watched Brashen for an evening, Cerwin appeared a callow youth. The comparison annoyed her. It made her conquest less of a triumph. He caught her two hands, then dared to kiss each of her palms before releasing them. "You must not," she murmured to him. "You know I am promised to another." So, before we dive further in, now we have a little bit of a comparison. Brashen and Cerwin.
Yeah, I think this is an interesting thought from her to have. I think it goes to show that Brashen's visit kind of shattered the illusion. There must not be a lot of people Brashen's age around at the trader meetings for her to see very often. I assume because mostly they're off trading.
Or married.
And so I think
they would have never been brought to her attention because she's only been around the young single men around Cerwin's age because of Dello.
Right, true. So I was thinking that Malta sees herself as an adult because someone like Cerwin is approachable,
like 18 or 17-year-old Cerwin.
Like, that makes sense that he's the adult, or not adult, but like he's the older man that she's been idolizing, and all of his group of friends, these are the men that she's seen, and she's like, oh yeah, like I'm an adult, they're an adult, that means I'm an adult, I can do this, I can seduce them, this is easy, blah blah blah. But then she's never actually had to compare that to what a real adult is. And I think especially in the society where the young adults that are in their early 20s to early 30s, they are out doing things. They're out.
Right.
They're gone. They're not able to participate as much in these society events. It makes a little bit more sense to me why she would see herself as an adult if there's no other adults, that young adults around to say otherwise, I guess. So yeah, I think that's definitely something that we learn here. And then also a little bit savage that she's like, ugh, your brother's hotter.
Or at least more mature and more of a conquest.
I guess. Yeah, like Cerwin's too easy.
Yeah.
He's a house cat.
So Cerwin is saying, like, I'll never allow Rain to have you. You know, you're not promised to him. We can be together, whatever. And Malta is saying, playing up the dramatics, as we said before, and saying,
Right.
no, it's too late. The tidings that your brother brought to us tonight make my fate inevitable. My father's life depends on it. So he surges to his feet. He's like, what are you saying? What news came? My brother brought it? Your father's life? I don't understand. For an instant, her voice tightened with real tears. Pirates have captured our family ship. Brashen was kind enough to bring us word of it. We fear my father and brother may already be dead, but if they are not, if any chance remains, oh, Cerwin, somehow we must find the money to ransom them, and yet, how can we? Humbling as it is, I know you are aware of our financial difficulties. Once word gets out that our ship has been taken, our creditors will close in like sharks. I do not know how we will feed ourselves, let alone find money to ransom my father. I fear I will be wed off to the Rainwilder immediately. As much as that distresses me, I know it is what I must do. Rain is a generous man. He will help us get my father back. If marrying him is what it will take, I do not mind so much. Her voice cracked on these final words. She swayed, genuinely overcome by her cruel fate. He catches her and says, you poor, brave child. Can you imagine that I would allow you to go to a loveless marriage even for the sake of your father? And so she's playing that up, like really saying, you know, I'm the savior here. I have to do everything within my power, and believing it herself.
Yeah, she really does believe this narrative that she is the main character and that fate has worked against her to back her into this corner, that there is literally no other choice than marrying Rain, which
she's partially right, but
yeah,
not in the
like,
bigger thing.
Yeah, I don't know. It's hard because that's the easiest option for sure, but that doesn't mean it's the only option. And I also feel a little bad for her because in this moment she's trying to be like, look at me, a brave woman. And Cerwin's response is, you poor child. Like,
yeah.
So even Cerwin knows that she is too young, which like a little weird that he is still pursuing that. But yeah, having Malta in this moment really come face to face with her role of this is real. I am really in this horrible bind with no way out.
She is strongly playing on his emotions too, because then after she brings up like, you know, I'll be thinking of saving my father when I'm married to Rain and have to accommodate him.
Yeah.
And Cerwin's like, no, it'll never come to that.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because I think it really, again, I feel like I've said this 800 times this episode alone, but it really highlights her immaturity and her childishness, that she doesn't understand that it's not just her family that is struggling financially. Like just because they are hit really hard and she is living it doesn't mean that the Trells are way better off. Even though they're probably better off than her family, they don't have the money to save that. Even if Cerwin was currently the head of the family, his father just died dramatically, he could spend the family money whatever way he chose. They don't have enough money to help this situation.
Probably not.
So I just find it really ironic that Malta spends all this time saying, I'm the only adult, I'm the only one who knows what's going on, but like can't even grasp the concept that because of the slavery, because of the things that her family has been trying to teach her, Bingtown as a whole, and especially the old traders, are struggling financially together. It's not just them.
Also goes to show the immaturity of Cerwin, because if he was the head of the family, he would be throwing money at Malta right now.
Yeah, he absolutely would. And they don't have that money. Like, I don't know.
They do have a live ship.
Yeah.
And it probably trades up the Rainwild River. So they, like, you know, like you mentioned, they probably have more money than the Vestrits, definitely. Mm-hmm. Because they're not just reliant on crops.
Right. No, and I don't want to pretend like everybody else is a step away from the Vestrit level of destitute, but
they just have to cut back on their groundskeeping, not their actual servant staff.
Right. Yeah. So like yes, they would have money, and potentially they would have enough money to throw at this problem, but I don't think they have enough money to throw at this problem and
spare.
stay afloat.
Yes.
So like,
which is why I'm saying
yeah,
with Cerwin being as immature as he is I'll call him naive.
sure.
As naive as he is, with Malta being as malicious as she is in her manipulations, she's
Yeah.
out here trying to bankrupt a family
Yeah, because
to help her own.
she has no intention of then marrying Cerwin instead if she can help it. If she can get Cerwin to just give them money, that is her best case scenario.
yeah.
That is what she's hoping for here. And then it'll be like, well, thanks for the help. I actually love somebody else now.
And he says, I do not claim to be as wealthy as a Rainwilder, but all I have and all I ever will have, I put at your service. Oof.
Okay, bud. I mean, at least they've known each other for a while, presumably because she's been hanging out with Dello this whole time. So I assume as children they played together a little bit. But still, guy, you've known this girl for what? I don't know.
It's funny.
Young love.
So she's still playing on that, saying like, playing on his pride and ego a little bit. Oh, I didn't think you could. You don't like have that much money to give, right? Your father's still the main trader. Poor Brashen is proof that he runs his household with a firm hand. I know what your heart bids you to do, but in reality, there may be little you can actually command. So she's trying to dig to see like what he can actually do for her and like get solid promises. But she makes a mistake by bringing up Brashen.
Right.
Because that's like her second mistake around Brashen in as many days or many chapters, I guess. Because she tries to seduce him in the house and he's like, you should be ashamed of yourself.
Yeah.
And now this time bringing up Brashen when she doesn't know the relationship.
Yeah.
And Cerwin gets sidetracked on the topic of Brashen.
Right. And you would think that there was enough of a hint that it isn't a great relationship when he was already stumbling over the fact that Brashen brought the news.
Right.
And then here, when she makes the mention of Brashen, it's, yeah, like you said, it just is a misstep because now Cerwin is focused on Brashen and ranting about him, saying,
she draws it back in pretty quick, but yeah, it's...
My brother brought about his own misfortunes. Do not pity him. Your other words are true, and I do not deny them. I cannot put the entire Trell fortune at your disposal, but... And then she cuts him off and says, as if I would ask that.
And she tries to, turn it back to
yeah,
her problems.
The money.
Yes.
To how you're going to get me my money. But yeah, I think it is interesting to have this reaction. It makes me wonder how Dello and Cerwin feel about Brashen. Like, do they know why Brashen doesn't talk to them anymore? Or
I feel like Cerwin does. Dello... It depends on how open their family is, but as Brashen was talking about in last chapter, she was very small, probably like between 1 and 3 years old.
Yeah. So it just makes me wonder if there's a little bit of tension there because Cerwin's upset that his brother stopped talking to him and abandoned them, if that's kind of the narrative that they have, or if
probably heard stuff from his father.
Yeah. And I mean, around town, people gossip, but I wonder if part of that too is like a little bit of hurt that, oh, my brother doesn't talk to me anymore, which isn't necessarily Brashen's fault because I'm sure Brashen isn't able to contact them. But there could also be how dare Brashen ruin the reputation of our family.
Right. Yeah.
Oh.
So she turns it back towards her problems here, saying like, what must you think of me? That I might come to you at night at risk of my reputation to ask for money? She turned aside from him in a swirl of cloak that briefly revealed the white cotton nightgown she wore beneath it. She heard Dello's indrawn gasp. She scuttled out of the gazebo to stand beside Malta. You are practically naked, she scolded her. Malta, how could you? There. If Cerwin had been too dense to notice it before, he knew it now. And so she draws herself up with dignity, saying like, oh, I had to do it like this. I had no choice. I had one chance to slip out, and I took it. I don't regret it. Cerwin has been a gentleman enough to ignore it and not shame me. It is not as if I chose to come to him this way. Cannot you understand that my father's life is at stake, Dello? This is not an ordinary time, and the ordinary rules do not apply. So she does a really good job here of turning the attention back to herself, one, to try to capture Cerwin's heart and lust a little bit
Mhm.
more, and two, to switch the narrative on Dello, because Cerwin chimes up here and says, like, yeah, don't be such a child about this. I'm very
Yeah,
proper, and I don't care about modesty when people's lives are at stake.
right. And I think also it's a good way for her to push Dello down and be like, you're such a naive child. You don't know anything. I'm the adult in this situation. But yeah, it is really interesting that she decided to do it in this way. And poor
Right.
Dello, I mean, it's 2 against 1 here. She's losing, but it I think it's funny Malta's like normal rules don't apply to me when I don't want them to. When she literally there is no excuse for anybody else breaking normal rules like her Aunt
Right.
Althea or her mother or
Yeah.
her grandmother. And so, just having her be like, normal rules don't apply because I'm the one who makes the rules. Ugh.
But as you said, Dello was kind of ganged up on, but Malta doesn't want that. She doesn't want Dello to gossip about this. So she's trying to placate her a bit, saying, I know you are only trying to protect me. I love you for it. Nevertheless, I am sure that your brother would never do me harm. You see, I know your heart, and that tells me much of his. You are honorable people. I do not fear to be alone with him. Oh, Malta, you see so much. Obviously moved, she retreated once more to the gazebo to leave them, to have a private talk.
Mm-hmm.
So Malta does a good job of placating Dello, knows that, Dello now knows that Malta's on her side and knows them to be honorable people.
Yeah, I think big ask of Malta to think that this little comment that's nice is going to keep Dello from not running her mouth, considering everything we know about Dello is that she is constantly gossiping. So, so this story is going to get out, I'm pretty sure. I don't think that this detail will be spared. I think the second Dello finds it entertaining enough, she's going to spread the rumor. So I find it admirable that Malta would think of herself as skilled enough to deter a gossiper from gossiping. But at least it won't be in a malicious way.
Right. So now alone again, she gathers her cloak around herself tightly so it shows off her body more. Well aware of that.
Mm-hmm.
In the guise of modesty.
Right. Which, like, presumably, the way I picture this is that her cloak is basically covering everything anyway. And that's why nobody noticed anything or said anything until she did the twirl, because that's when it came open. Obviously, there's no buttons on cloaks necessarily all the way down. And so, like, that's why it was said anything. So she really doesn't need to, like, hold it tight to her. But there she goes. Might as well, I guess.
Cerwin, and then gives a sigh. It shames me that I must speak so plainly, but my need forces me to it. I do not ask all that you have and all you will ever possess. Whatever you can offer me discreetly and comfortably, I shall gratefully accept. But more important to me would be for your family to join forces with mine. Tomorrow night there is to be a Traders' Council meeting. I shall be there. Please come. If you can move your father to attend and speak out for us, it would help us greatly. The loss of our ship and my father is not solely my family's loss. It affects all Bingtown traders. If these cutthroat pirates do not fear to capture a live ship, what will they not take? If they do not fear to hold prisoner a Bingtown trader and his son, who is safe? Malta's voice had grown righteously impassioned. She seizes Cerwin's hand and says, if your family could unite with mine in this, perhaps my grandmother would reconsider Rain's courtship. Perhaps she might see there are better matches. So this part, before we move on to what she wishes and what actually happens, is the meat of everything. And this is actually where she has been maturing. She sees a larger picture than just trying to get his money, right?
Right.
We've been very harsh on her, she's just trying to bankrupt the Trell family and get any money she can. She says, discreetly and comfortably, give me money.
Yes.
But don't bankrupt yourself. Just ally your family with ours, because she does place trust in her mother, her aunt, and her grandmother, because that was their plan.
Yeah.
To try to go to the Traders' Council. She's taking some of Althea's arguments here, not all of them,
No.
but the pirate thing, and really kind of playing that up. And that's a sensible option and something that Cerwin can do. So it is a very, very savvy play by her here.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's really smart to acknowledge that it's not possible to get all his money. I think if she thought she could get all of the Trell fortune right now, she would have played that harder. But she does acknowledge that that's not going to happen. So she has to make sure that she's getting something out of this. And that also will be enough to string him along. And by giving him the carrot, the dangle of the carrot of maybe if you do this well enough, we can be the ones getting married.
Right.
And you'd save me from the Rainwilder. It's,
Allows him to play
really
the hero.
impressive. Yeah. It's really impressive. She's really, taking what he wants to hear and folding it into her own needs. I think it's really well done. She just doesn't quite understand fully how real life is going to work when this happens. She has delivered this line. She is so proud of the delivery. And she expects that now he will sweep her up and give her a kiss, and it will be magical and amazing.
Like the end of a minstrel song.
Yes. And that doesn't happen.
Instead, he fell to his knees before her. I will come to the Traders' Council tomorrow night. I will speak to my father and convince him the Trells should lend their support to your family. You will see. I will prove to you and your family that I am worthy of you. It took her a moment to find a suitable response. She had been so certain he would kiss her. What had she done wrong? I have never doubted your worthiness, she faltered at last. She could almost taste her disappointment. He came back to his feet slowly. He looked down at her, eyes shining. I will be worthy of your confidence, he promised her. She waited, thinking he might suddenly embrace her and kiss her ardently. Her skin tingled all over, awaiting his touch. She dared to look straight into his face, her eyes burning with passion. She wet her lips and parted them invitingly as she tilted her chin up toward him. Until tomorrow, Malta Haven, he said fervently. You will see how well I keep my word. Then, as if he were bidding her farewell at an afternoon tea, he bowed gravely, turned to his sister, said, Come, Dello, I had best be getting you home, and then sweeps away. Farewell, Malta, Dello sighed. Then she wiggled her fingers at her friend. I'll ask my mother if I may come to the Traders' Council also. Maybe we can sit together. I'll see you then. And she just stands there
In disbelief.
What had she done wrong? No gift token of his affection, no passionate kiss. He had not even pleaded to be allowed to escort her part of the way back to her house. She frowned after them. Then in an instant she realized her error. The fault was not hers, but Cerwin's. He was simply not man enough to live up to her expectations.
Sorry. It's, to some extent, yeah, I guess. If you're with somebody and they don't meet your expectations, it's totally fine to be like, yeah, they just aren't the person that I need them to be for my needs, and that's fine. But the fact that it's like a blame thing,
It's
like,
not me. It's you.
oh, no, you're right. I didn't do anything wrong. It is you that did something wrong.
I went by the playbook. I did everything perfectly. He was supposed to kiss me like the end of the minstrel song, and
then
he
didn't and stuck to decorum. I made my figure known to him. What else could I do?
I showed off my ankles.
I wet my lips and parted them slightly. What else did he need?
I've been hinting so strongly at it.
I looked him right in the eyes. It's like so goofy. And I mean, it is. I think the first time I read this, I also was a little surprised that he didn't even just like kiss her hand again or something.
Yeah, he did once.
Yeah,
but
he kissed her palms. But I was a little like, okay. But it is, I think, sad because it does kind of break reality. But in typical Malta fashion, it's not because that's just real life. It's because the other person did something wrong. It's
right.
Like she played the part correctly.
And
that was
just
what
he's just too young for her.
Yeah, clearly. Any real man would have done better. Like, no. I don't think so, but
So she's frustrated and disappointed here, and she knits her brow in frustration, or in thought, but then self-consciously smooths them out because she doesn't want a lined forehead like her mother.
which very funny. As though not frowning is going to keep those lines away. I mean, maybe for a little bit longer than somebody who frowns more, but they're coming, baby girl.
Brashen had made her frown. He had been so rude to her at first, but then, when she was offering him coffee and flirting a bit, he had definitely reacted to her. She would wager that if he had been the one meeting her in the gazebo tonight, she would have been thoroughly kissed. A sudden shiver ran up her back at that thought. It was not that she liked him. He looked far too coarse in his pirate silks and long mustache. He had still stunk of the ship when he came to the door, and his hands were scarred and rough with calluses. No, she felt no attraction to that man. But his sidelong glances at her Aunt Althea had stirred her interest. The sailor had watched her move like a hungry cat stalking a bird. Althea never met his eyes. Even when she spoke to him, she contrived to be looking out the window, or stirring a cup of tea, or picking at her fingernails. Her avoidance of his glance had distressed him. Time after time, he had addressed his remarks directly to her. At one point, she had even gone over to Selden and sat on the floor beside him, taking his hands as if her nephew could shield her from Brashen's avid eyes. So she's kind of remarking and again comparing Cerwin to Brashen here.
Right.
And she ends this musing with, she firmly intended to find out what was between them. She would discover just what Althea knew that could make a man look at her like that. What would she have to say to make Cerwin look at her so warmly? She shook her head. No, not Cerwin. Comparing him to his older brother had opened her eyes. He was a boy still, with no heat to his glance or power of his own. He was a poor fish, a catch she should throw back. Even Rain had more warmth to his touch. Rain always brought her gifts. She might, after all, use the dream box tonight. Oh, she's so capricious.
Yeah. I keep leaning forward to the mic to roll my eyes as though you guys can hear it. Just know there's been a lot of eye rolls and none so big as this one. It's so funny that she thinks that it's something that she's doing wrong to make a man not look at her that way. And I think...
And that there's like some sort of secret formula.
Yeah.
Like, what did Althea say? Like, what can I say now?
Yeah. What do I do? What do I say to somebody? How do I treat someone that way to get them to look at me that way? Instead of realizing that you can't really manipulate feelings to that extent. Like, you can make somebody think that you are more attractive to them or say things to get them to like you or be interested. But real deep feelings isn't a formula. It's not a thing you can just create, I guess.
Right.
And I mean, I don't know, I guess maybe you can do it, but the fact that she thinks that's what this is, and the fact that she thinks that Althea would also do the things that she herself does to get the male attention, it's really interesting to me. That there's no way somebody would look at Althea that way otherwise unless she was also using these tactics to get male attention.
Well, that's how you get male attention.
Yeah.
Is those tactics. That's what she knows.
It's not just
what
because
she learned.
Yeah. It's not just because, you're there. Oh, that naivety of children. No, I think it's really telling of Malta and her personality that she thinks that there is a formula you can follow. I don't want to say that Hobb's underlying meaning here was that the reason that Althea's way to get Brashen to look at her that way was because they slept together. I like to believe that the reason Brashen looks at Althea that way is because there's deep feelings that they have that bond
right.
and that relationship, and it has... And
both of them have remarked on that in the past chapters, actually. I think Brashen has something like, it wasn't just betting with Althea that made him have feelings for her.
Yeah.
It was just the catalyst for him to realize that he has had feelings all along.
Right.
It was just kind of like one moment of intimacy kind of sparked the like, oh, man, I actually do care for her.
Yeah, like this is actually somebody I really care about. And I think that's the important thing is that it's just... That's how people look at each other when they really deeply feel that need. The way Luke just looked at me was a little scary. But no, I don't know. And I
What are
kind
you
of like
talking
that.
about? I don't. But yeah, it's this is a big highlight of this section. It's a big a big spotlight right on Malta's character and what she really thinks of. And I'm going to go back to something I think we talked about in Ship of Magic is when does Malta actually mature, right?
Yeah.
She has matured a bit.
Mm-hmm.
She has gotten a little bit better at seeing a large picture, of seeing different sides of things and actually trying to work towards a goal.
Yeah.
But there's still nothing quite there. She's not there yet.
I think this is a really big turning point for Malta. I think we're going to see that because I think this is the start of the disillusionment of what her father has been teaching her. I
Right.
think she believes, because of the lessons she's learned from her parents and her father, especially, that women don't have power, and the only power they really have is over a man if they can get their wiles
Right.
correct. And I think seeing that even if you do and say all of the things that you know will get the reaction you want, it isn't power. It's not, you're trying to manipulate people, and you will successfully manipulate people, but it's not the same as just going after what you want and taking control of a situation in a more, I guess, honest way.
Right.
And so I think this is the start of that realization of maybe women aren't just pretty things to subtly move the chess pieces. Maybe they can.
And I think that lesson is hammered home a little bit more at the end of this chapter with Tantaglia coming in and meeting them. Just like, oh, this is a being that can help directly, right?
And is female.
Right.
Yeah. And
although it's hard to say whether you can tell that right off the bat.
I think you can.
Can you?
I think I could be wrong, obviously, but
yeah. And now I know in the first discussions we had during the first book, I was wondering if her maturation came from dragon magic.
Mm-hmm.
And I still don't know, but it's leaning towards that it's just the influence of a strong, powerful female, a queen, if you will, a queen dragon, showing her that you can have power without relying on men.
Yeah, and I think that's really important.
And not necessarily just magic. So I'm looking forward to seeing if that develops how we want it and if her character develops over the last half of this book.
Yeah, and I think this chapter especially really makes me excited for Malta and her growth. I think this is the first time I'm kind of seeing a little bit, even though she is still immature and she's still manipulative and she's still
baby steps.
Yeah, she's still like making the same mistakes I've been mad at her for the whole book. I think I know what's happening soon and I know where she's coming from, and it's easier to see it now through the lens of growth and she's maturing. And yeah, I don't know. I really like that.
Well, we are going to stop the chapter here and take a break, and we'll have part 2 out for next week. It's a longer chapter, and we're going to pick it up with Brashen's point of view as he's leaving the Vestrid house.
Yeah.
But we are going to call it quits there with Malta.
Before we end, I just want to make the point that Malta absolutely saw everything that was going down with between Brashen and Althea.
Yeah.
And I think Althea made a comment. I don't know if we talked about it, but Althea did make a comment that that's why she was afraid to acknowledge Brashen, because she didn't want Malta to get anything out of that interaction.
Or her family.
Or her family.
Other family.
But she specifically said that she mentions that she doesn't want Malta to dig where she doesn't need to dig. And so I think this is acknowledgement that Althea's right, that Malta is watching and Malta is trying to get the dirt. So,
but Malta also acknowledges that she doesn't think that Kefria or Ronica noticed.
Yeah, it is more just Malta's way
focus on relationships.
Yeah,
and
weird.
Trying to absorb any kind of, why is a man looking at a woman like this?
And why isn't he looking at me? It's so weird that he would choose someone closer to his age.
Oh, yeah. So thank you so much for tuning in.
Yeah, we look forward to seeing you guys next week.
Mm-hmm. And if you have any thoughts on this chapter so far or on this episode, please let us know. You can email us directly at isfitshappy@gmail.com. We don't always answer them, so sorry about that, but we do always read them. We're always looking forward to reading all of your thoughts and your comments and theories and just little updates. You can also comment on our posts on social media or direct message us on any one of those. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, on Threads, and on YouTube as well. So feel free to leave comments, DM us.
Yeah, we like to know what you think. Okay, so now we're to my favorite part of the episode where we talk about what you guys have brought to us. And we're going to start with a correction. So,
yeah.
Episode 151.
161? 171?
Oh my goodness.
We're on 172 right now, so 171.
Episode
we're
171.
Going back to the last book, actually.
Yeah. Let's just go back a little bit. So episode 171, which is our last episode we posted, we talked about how Brashen didn't know that the Vivacia was being used as a slaver.
Yeah, when we were bringing up how, like, oh yeah, and Kenneth apparently kills all the slavers' crew, and we were kind of thinking of he was using that as a don't worry. He kills the slavers' crew, and that's obviously not Vivacia. It's like, oh yeah, he didn't know, so he's using this as a it's okay, and all the family is like, oh my god.
Yeah. Yeah, I think we definitely tried to play that off a little bit, and Ellen made sure to mention to us that actually Brashen did hear that Vivacia was a slaver. He just didn't believe it.
Yes, so that was from Sincure Falden, I believe.
Yes.
When he was learning of Vivacia the first time.
Yeah, Falden said that the live ship Kenneth captured was a slaver.
Mm-hmm.
And Brashen refused to believe it. So I think it still stands that he could have been saying it in a comforting tone, because I think he probably truly did not believe they would have done that.
But just in case, he is kind of a upfront, blunt guy, so he might have just been saying it as like, this is what I know about the situation.
Yep. Yeah. So maybe there was a little bit of thought, just the typical Brashen non-thought of how that would come across, especially considering he's doing this trying to get Althea back in some weird way.
Well, not trying. He never says he's trying to get Althea back.
No,
he just is excited to see her.
He's so excited. His ideal is that he's going to say this, and Althea is going to jump into his arms and be like, let's go get him together, Tiger. So,
yeah, definitely not house cat. Let's go get him, Tiger.
So I think it's like a little ironic that he thinks that's going to be the reaction when he brings the news that, yeah, your brother-in-law and nephew are probably dead. LOL, let's go get him. Let's go get the ship.
Yeah, so thank you for the correction, Ellen.
Yes. And Ellen also brings up that she thinks that we were too harsh on Greg and Althea's matchup.
Yeah, basically, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I got to it, it was Greg is basically a product of society's pressures.
Yeah.
And Althea is looking for a romantic relationship where she does not have to compromise on whose happiness is prioritized.
Right. Yeah, I think we kind of made it seem more like the biggest problem with the matchup between Althea and Greg is that Greg isn't going to be as compromising. And Ellen argues that Greg would compromise, but Althea doesn't want a love where compromise is there at all,
it's not in a situation where they would be a good match together.
Yeah. Yeah. So I did really like Ellen says specifically, if it's a choice between your or my happiness, then we can't truly be happy together. And that's Althea's point of view. Mm-hmm. And that's what she ends up getting, but it is a really hard stance to take because it's not really how society works.
Yeah.
And
honestly, any society. And she still has to compromise.
And she does.
Because yes, she kind of gets her way, but her way would be her being the captain, her being the leader, like never having a kid really, but like having a man on the side.
Yeah, yeah.
And Brashen is the captain with the bond with the ship.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think it's an easier compromise to make, though. And
Yes.
Ellen brings up the fact that part of the compromise that Althea doesn't love is that even if Greg were willing to compromise and let her go against society, Althea knows firsthand how harsh society can be to somebody
Right.
that is going against what they deem normal. And so she doesn't necessarily want Greg to be put in the situation where he has to go against society for her, in Ellen's opinion. And I also like that take too, just like giving it a little bit more of a Althea thinking things a little bit more ahead than Greg. And it's not because he wouldn't do it, it's because it would be hard. And Althea doesn't like that. So yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ellen.
Then we have an email from Jonas about Malta from the last chapter. And a lot of the first part of this email is about the discussion of Malta versus Althea. And I think that happened really quick in the beginning of the chapter when Althea says, I'm going out, and then Malta makes the barb, and they kind of have a small little tiff because Malta's trying to make everybody angry and 'cause she's bored. And we had a conversation about Althea's kind of composure and her differences between her and her mom, basically.
Yeah. So I think in this moment, Althea is just more blunt than Ronica.
Yeah.
And
that's just who she is.
Yeah. And so that's the big difference. And then Jonas goes on to talk about how it's actually really sad that Malta thinks every adult is out there to control her.
Yeah.
And is really telling of how she was raised.
And kind of wishes that there might have been a little bit more Althea when she was younger. She might have turned out a little bit better. Just saying it how it is to her. Straight up.
Yeah. Calling her out and deadpan, just being like, I'm not letting you get away with that.
Right.
But instead, she had a upbringing. And I guess I haven't really thought about it from that angle necessarily, that she doesn't trust any adults around her.
No.
And she is at an age where obviously, I think, especially when girls go through puberty, but puberty in general, there's like this weird shift where everything's weird and hormones are weird, and
you become
start
obstinate.
And you start wanting to like go against your parents' will in some ways. I think even the best kids have that in that weird, awkward moment of puberty. But I think especially the fact that Malta doesn't feel like she can trust any adult.
Right.
Is and she wants to be an adult so she can have more control is kind of really sad. And Jonas also talks about how
it says a lot about Kefria and Kyle's parenting.
Yeah, and specifically leaves out Ronica because Ronica is her grandmother. And while Ronica is an adult and parental figure to Malta right now in the book,
not very motherly in general.
And not motherly, it also isn't Ronica's job to be her mom, because Ronica isn't her mom. And it's awful that the pieces weren't picked up and that somebody wasn't there to help Malta and Selden whenever her parents were being emotionally neglectful.
Yeah.
But it isn't necessarily on Ronica that she didn't catch that. They're not her kids. And so I think that's a really good call too, because I think as a whole, we all kind of have been a little bit harsh on Ronica and how she treats Malta, which, like, Ronica is pretty harsh considering it is, number one, her family member, and number two, a child. But it's also Malta, so it kind of gets slid past. But really, the onus is more on Kefria and Kyle.
Right.
Because they've raised Malta to this point to be this way.
Jonas, it ultimately says the burden of raising Malta should have never fallen on Ronica. In the end, it feels like nobody picked up the slack. Wintro was raised by monks, and good for him. Malta was raised by pulp novels, which is funny. Poor Selden isn't raised at all and roams around the house like a rat. Come on, Kefria, get your shit together.
Very funny. We both laughed out loud at the rat comment.
We know that there was Nana who was around and they had other people, but these kids need their parents too. It's not just servants who can do the raising. And what Jonas says here is true. And then he goes into talk more about how Malta it feels like she needs to stand up for herself and refuses to be controlled. And that's kind of where she's coming from. She had no trust in any adult figure, and now she's like, need to take that back for myself. I need to be the adult in the room. And that's something that Jonas says he really respects in her.
Yeah, and in that aspect for Jonas, that makes Malta fall more closely in line with the characters of Althea and Veronica, even just having that strong will and ability to stand up for yourself in a society where that's,
Independence.
yeah, the independence, being an independent woman when society tells you you can't be that, and being frustratingly,
I don't know, just frustratingly obstinate,
hard-headed. Yeah.
stubborn.
Yeah. So that's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you for those thoughts, Jonas. It is a good call out to a little bit more sympathy for Malta. And then Jonas also had a question for the both of us. And the question is, do you think Kyle, given the choice, would let Malta marry a man she loved or the richest suitor available? Let's say they're still in relatively dire straits money-wise, because I do believe Kyle loves his daughter and spoils her. He would want her to be happy, but in my opinion, he would marry her to the highest bidder, and Malta would have the disillusionment of a lifetime. What do you think?
I'm of the opinion that he wouldn't let her marry whoever she wanted, but he wouldn't send her off to the highest bidder. He would want the money, but he would send her off to someone who he thought was a good match.
Mm.
So if it was, like sending Malta away to like Chalced or something for the highest bidder, I don't think he would do that. If it was another trader family who was like the second or third tier, but they like had a lot of money, things, I think that would go. If it was Rainwild, I don't think he would do that.
It's hard because Kyle doesn't know the Rainwilders exist.
Right.
So in this scenario, he would have just been explained the existence of these warty creatures that live in the deep forest and handle magic things. I think for the simple fact that he wants to be able to trade in Rainwild goods, he would choose Rain. I think it doesn't even necessarily matter the money aspect as much as the trading aspect, because it does
connections and stuff.
Yeah, it does really seem like that's what he likes about Kefria, is that she could get him a live ship.
The prestige and
Yeah.
everything that comes with it, which is mainly the Rainwild River.
Yeah, but I kind of like your theory that it would be more about what match he personally believes is best rather than who has the most money. I think,
and ultimately it could line up where the best match that he thinks is the person with the most money.
Yeah.
And I think Jonas is somewhat correct in his assumption there. And I think she would have a disillusionment of the lifetime.
I don't know. Part of me wonders if
she
if
would
Kyle
probably go for it too.
Yeah, I feel like even if Kyle came in and was like, you have to marry the Rainwilder because he has a lot of money, she'd be like, yeah, daddy, you're so smart. Ooh, I should not have said it like that. Yeah, father, you are so smart. Like, I think she would really agree with that aspect.
Yeah.
But maybe not. Maybe she would be really upset that her father isn't letting her, because she doesn't love anybody yet, is the thing. And her whole deal at the beginning of the series, at least, is that she doesn't want to get married right away. She doesn't want to settle down and have a kid like a cow, to be married off like her mom.
She wants to date a little bit,
Yeah, she wants to date around. She wants to explore the world before settling down at the ripe old age of 18 when you're decrepit and a grandmother. So I think it's hard because no matter what, she's going to be disappointed. I think in her mind, when she's waiting for her dad to come in and tell her which suitor to go after, it's not because she's waiting for him to tell her who to marry. She's waiting for him to tell her how to get money out of all of them and not have to say yes to any of them.
Right. Yeah, and she's hoping for a solution that takes it out of her hands where she doesn't have to make any choice.
Yeah, but I don't think she's thinking of it as her father would in any way make her get married, whereas I think that is the only thing Kyle would be thinking about. And I don't think there's a world where Kyle's like, she's not ready to be married. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
I don't know. So yeah, I think you're right. I think there is disillusionment in Malta's future had this book turned out differently. But yeah, I don't know. I don't necessarily know that it is fully about the money, but I think that is a big driving factor.
Right. Thank you, Jonas.
Yeah, thanks, Jonas. And thank you to everybody who wrote in. We're going to also do a little talk. We had a poll about who would be the best rote character from all of Realm of the Elderlings to set up your friend with on a blind date.
Yeah, this happened a little bit ago.
Yeah.
And we had a little break in the episode, so we haven't had a chance to talk about it.
Yeah, but you guys have spoken, and Ketrican won. Ketrican is the best person to set your friends up with on a blind date.
Yeah, so if you were around a few weeks ago from when this is published, we had sent out a kind of a poll just to say, like, hey, comment your thoughts of any character. And then we took all of those responses and added them into a bracket similar to the last one that we did with who was the most annoying.
Mm-hmm.
Who won that one again? Was that Regal or was that Kyle? I think it was Kyle.
It was Kyle.
Yeah,
Yeah, Kyle's the most annoying rote character.
So we took all those responses, put it into a bracket, and then day after day, we kind of eliminated some, and it ultimately ended up being Verity versus Ketrican.
Yeah.
Which surprised me, actually. I was kind of rooting for Jack a little bit.
Yeah, I'm sad Jack went out. I don't know. I feel like there were a lot of good ones.
Yeah, I can list them right now, actually.
Yeah.
We had Verity versus Molly, which Verity won. Carson versus Jenna. Carson won. Jack versus Leftrin. Eki Kelter, who is a Three Ships woman who appears, I think, either at the end of this book or in the third book, who is a Three Ships woman that Greg is kind of soft on later on.
Yeah.
And Greg Tanira. And Greg wins that one. And Riddle, Starling, Althea, Dutiful, Byrrec, Brashen, Big Ferret, and Ketrican. Big Ferret was one of the responses that we got, so we added him into the bracket. I thought that was a funny response anyways.
Yeah.
We get like a paragraph from him. Just, well, not even from him, from his wit partner, Small Ferret.
Yes.
So yeah, we had a fun little bracket and the people spoke.
Yeah, it was really funny to see some of the responses. Some people, we actually, one of the days, it was the second to last vote, where it was,
I think it was the second day, because it was Jack versus Greg, I think is the one you're talking about.
Where two different people once said,
yeah.
Okay.
So we Jack versus Greg was a very, very tight vote. 3 votes separated them. And we had one person chime in, said, I don't know what to think if Greg doesn't win. And then the other person said, oh, bleh, Greg, I hope Jack wins.
Yeah, it was very funny. They were literally like the message was like within an hour of each other too. So it was even funnier that like 2 random strangers somewhere random in the world, both at around the same time, were doing this and thought the exact opposite thing. So it was really funny to see. And then I also really enjoyed, we had a response from Rachel from Buckkeep Radio chime in and say, thanks, Saw, when Ketrican won. So very good call. Yeah. As a follower of Saw myself, I thought it was very, very good response.
But yeah, most of you thought that Ketrican would be the best person to set your friend up with on a blind date.
Yeah.
Although Ellen did say in one of the in one of the comments on Facebook that she would most likely poison you if it didn't go well. So
yeah, so there is that to look out for.
There is danger there. There is danger.
But hey, maybe it wouldn't work like with Fitz. Although
well, it kind of worked.
Yeah, that's true. I do also want to mention that we got a really funny comment from John that said, if Verity had a smartphone, he'd be following Redship Raiders and Elderlings accounts the whole time, even sneaking out to go to the bathroom or to get popcorn during this little showdown of who's going to win, Ketrican or himself.
He's a little bit distracted.
Yes. So I thought that was a really funny comment on who Verity is, but I don't know. I like Verity. I think he would have been a great date. He'd talk about maps. I don't know.
That's pretty much it, though.
Yeah.
Maps,
Ketrican,
soldiering.
Listen, between the two, I don't know. I'd like to go on a date with both of them. I think Ketrican would be... She has much more varied top hobbies.
True.
So talking to her would be cool for that reason. I think Verity probably is pretty good with ladies, I would think.
Probably. Not as good as chivalry, of course.
No.
I don't know. It would be interesting.
Yeah. I'd like to talk to both of them either way. But yeah, it was fun to see the results. I'm sure we'll do another one soon. We're not really sure what kind of question we're going to ask. If anybody has any ideas, once again, feel free to send them in. We can, take them into consideration. But we have been enjoying doing those and getting your guys' opinions on weird questions about Realm of the Elderling characters.
Yeah. And if you guys have thoughts on different formats or anything like that, please also send those suggestions. Take those into consideration as well. Thank you so much for everyone who voted and participated.
And everybody who writes in every week. It's really nice to hear from you guys, and we look forward to hearing what you have to say next week.